Hello and welcome to Tools in the Shed, a podcast powered by CarsGuide, ready to rip into car stuff that has caught our eye this week. I'm CarsGuide Deputy Editor James, and with me is Adventure Editor Crafty and Deputy News Editor Justin.
Good morning.
Week, we're looking at a tough Chinese truck that might just have what it takes to make the usual ute suspects think twice. We'll look at some fresh metal in the CarsGuide garage this week, and we'll catch up with the world's most bored billionaire in this week's Muskwatch, so stay with us. But we've had some feedback, and last week we were talking about Fords that are coming, Fords that we'd like to see come to Australia, and that was across the Baby Ranger, better known as the Maverick, some detail on the next Ranger, but most of all on the Bronco, and that's where the majority of feedback has come. And, you know, Andre Voyeur is pretty typically says yes for Bronco, and Kodiak 7 says Bronco not coming to Australia is a crime. I'm not sure where the rules are written, but it's a crime. And it's also short-sighted, given that Aussies will be spending more time at home over the next few years. These are the kind of cars we need. And Senior Bob agrees 100%. And in fact, David Birdie Burt came in and said almost the same thing. It will be some time before Australians recommence international travel, and perhaps even longer before we see mass international tourism in Australia. I reckon car makers should take advantage of Australia's ISO period and provide some additional tourer options, such as the Bronco. So that all makes sense. It would be a fantastic touring car, I would have thought, that the 5-door version anyway, on some, not necessarily off-road, but all-terrain or, some reasonable tyres. I reckon it'd be a fantastic tourer.
It'll be lots of fun too, lots of fun.
Absolutely. And Jim Danick says, let me do a Richard Berry. You heard it here first. Bronco will come to Australia within 2 years. The only reason it's not coming now is expectations of initial demand in left-hand drive markets. Being on the Ranger T6 platform, I wouldn't think there are technical reasons it can't come here. And that seems a fair enough assumption. But TGV, the very fast train, chimed in and said, well, from what production facility, though? Because you'd have to find somewhere that's ready to produce right-hand drive, or you have to tune up the factory that's producing left-hand drive to be able to do that. And that's not beyond the bounds of possibility, but it is a pretty tall thing to do at the best of times. So I thought that was an interesting comment. And Hammer rocks.
Hammer.
Fingers crossed for right-hand drive Bronco. It's practically Australian. Sure, it's born in the USA, but it was conceived down under. Funny how no American-sourced motoring journalist has ever mentioned the fact in any of their reviews. Even the interview with the Bronco designer didn't mention anything about its engineering was done by Ford Australia. So there you go, a little bit of parochial whinging from the Hammer. And 88 MTB 88 says, yes, Bronco will be a hit. Even the Bronco Sport, which is, the baby version, which will be a rugged, smallish SUV. And TGV chimed in again and said that he thought Bronco Sport will work for our market. He sees it as a good candidate, that we did have the last generation Escape, which sold in decent numbers, but he doesn't think a Maverick type ute is the go for Australia. Doesn't see it as a market. And I suppose he's right. It feels like utes are getting bigger rather than smaller. But as we said, maybe that push up to the bigger ones leaves a little niche down here for something of a compact size. You never know. Senior Bob, forget focus-based ute. Will flop in Australia. Right-hand drive Bronco, please, for Australia. I'd buy one, and all caps, everyone I know with 4x4 wants one. Even the Toyota and Nissan blokes, and the Triton and D-Max fanboys, etc. They're uber cool. Petrol, please. I'm sick and tired of diesel 4x4 with low kilometre expensive service intervals and many sensors and other crap to make them go once the kilometres mount up. Petrol 4x4, all caps, please! Exclamation mark.
He does a lot of shouting, that bloke.
He's Senior Bob, and he's got a lot of rage. He's got a lot of rage built up there about diesel 4x4s.
If only there was all this enthusiasm about Broncos, the NRL team, because they're having a pretty ordinary season, aren't they?
They're having a tough trot of it, pardon the pun. But yes, they really are. TGV finished off the Bronco chat by saying, Shame the rear suspension is not a Watts-Link coil spring setup. And that's, as I understand it, as per Ranger, has that setup, the T6. And instead, now the far inferior pan-hard rod coil springs. I'm guessing the American could not figure out what a Watts-Link is, so they opted for something from a 1971 HQ Kingswood instead. It's not bad. And also he says, by the way, to the Kiwi fella that said the Navara can't accept V-based engines, and actually that was Roto Ihu, one of our Kiwi mates, says the current D23 NP300 Navara can easily accept a V configuration engine. You only need to look at the Mercedes X-Class for confirmation. So a 5.6 litre V6, and he makes the point that it's a wide-angle 60-degree V engine, will easily fit in the Navara engine bay. Come on, Prem car, make it happen.
Oh, yeah. So, if anyone can, those blokes can.
They can do anything. Yeah, precisely.
Absolutely.
They're unreal, those blokes.
And that leads to one particularly interesting comment on the Navara V8. The week prior, we'd been talking about the potential for a Nismo V8 Navara, a speculative Andrew Chesterton story. And MR said V8 ute is already a thing. And he noted the Harrop Superado. And that was putting the LSA V8 in a Colorado. He says, fine idea, probably nice to drive. I'm comfortable with the diesel model pushing 500 Newton meters, but they do lack the ponies. And, in terms of horsepower, that Superado, 396 kilowatts, 825 Newton meters at the hubs. So that's a lot of mumbo.
That's pretty good.
And he thinks good opportunities for all the major manufacturers. So I think that the outtake was people 100% want to have a Bronco here. If even half the people that claim to be in the market to buy one actually did, it would do pretty well. And there also seems to be some positive sentiment around a petrol V8 dual cab ute. So that's coming in. And in general terms, Dylan Stevens said, will Amarok update the technology and safety before the new cooperative model with Ford? And I think we spoke yesterday, Justin, and your mail was that's not going to happen.
Yeah, I think additional airbags, particularly for the rear, autonomous emergency braking and all the other safety gear that the Amarok currently lacks, it's not going to get added to that platform before it finishes up. So, I would be very surprised actually if that Volkswagen update the Amarok at all before the end of its life. But yeah, that Ranger-based model obviously will bring all of those things in. So we'll have to wait a little while yet. Well, exactly. I mean, Ranger's already got T6 Ranger's already got those things, so you can only assume it's going to build upon it, and therefore the Amarok will get all that stuff. So fingers crossed.
Very good.
That's something people have been screaming out.
Oh my god!
For so long. I mean,
yes,
it's ludicrous.
It's a long time coming.
You were sometimes in the corner of the office there, Crafty, just screaming to yourself about Amarok and
crying to myself
airbags
in a dark corner. Yeah.
That's right.
Mumbling something about airbags. Yeah. Yep.
The feedback finished off with a bit of a love fest in that Car Talk said, I love your reviews.
Wow.
David Adler.
It was talking about me.
I think it was specifically about you, Crafty. Absolutely right. David Adlard said, what a great podcast. Fantastic job, everyone. Looking forward to the next one. So I suppose with the cast we've got this week, we can only let David down. It was such a high point last week. And Ghulam Dastgir gave us no less than 14 thumbs up emojis.
Wow.
So, he's tapping that keyboard 14 times with the thumbs up emoji. So that's very much appreciated, Ghulam. Yes, thank you very much, Ghulam. But we're going to move on to our main topic of conversation. And I suppose the broader subject is the emergence of Chinese utes, pickups, call them what you will, some of which, of course, are already present in the Australian market. And subsequent generations of those vehicles are in development. And we've had a hint just recently of what's to come. Another Chesto news story, Justin, talking about what we in Australia call LDV, but in the Chinese market is Maxus, and it's a concept truck. Could you give us a thumbnail overview of what we're looking at for those on YouTube?
Yeah, absolutely. With the pandemic, obviously, motor shows worldwide are pretty much no more in 2020, except in China. So this week saw the Chengdu motor show go down. And I guess the headline act, certainly from an Australian perspective, was the debut of the Maxus pickup concept. So that hasn't been given a model name per se, but if you do look at it a little closer, you'll note some key similarities with what we call the LDV T60. But the big difference here, of course, is it's a significant change in design language, particularly from the front end. So what we're thinking is this is previewing a major facelift for the LDV T60, and you kind of see that real US influence, particularly from the front end, which our YouTube viewers will be able to see now. It's got that really strong front end, lots of presence, one of those cars that you'd see in your rearview mirror and probably move to the side.
Or like a diesel loco. It looks like a locomotive coming at you. It should be on tracks.
My God,
that big grille. Yep.
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
It's huge, absolutely massive. But then it's also got these tiny little LED headlights as well, so it really emphasizes the size of that grille and deep intakes on the side. It's quite a imposing looking thing, I would say. And then big flared wheel arches and all-terrain tires on it as well. Again, this is just a concept, it's not a production car, so it will certainly influence what ends up getting released officially, but it's definitely a tasty preview of what's to come next.
And Justin, you were saying earlier off air that when you do look at the profile, it points to it being almost a facelift as opposed to an all-new ground-up kind of design, yeah?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it definitely presented initially as being kind of an all-new model and perhaps a replacement for the LDV T60 in Australia. But yeah, the more you look at the finer details, particularly from the side, comparing the current T60 to this concept, it's clear that this is very much previewing a facelift. Doors are exactly the same. The tub is pretty much unchanged apart from, different tail lights and a slightly different bumper treatment. But I guess the major thing externally is the front fascia changes.
Yep.
But then also if you step inside, it's completely different to what we've come to expect with the T60. You've got these massive screens, kind of Mercedes-Benz style, sitting side by side as one kind of glass panel, if you will.
Yeah.
It certainly has that kind of luxurious lifestyle bent. But again, obviously there'll be different variations and
because they've
tarted
it up a bit from the side, haven't they? The sports bar and a bit of the bodywork kind of moves up to integrate that into the whole profile of the thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you've got a few additions on the side beyond the flared wheel arches, but at its core, it very much is what we know to be the T60, but the next evolution of it.
And Crafty, you had some mail in terms of what resides under the bonnet, that there may be some improvements there.
Well, they're talking about another 2-litre. There's a 2-litre in the. I was most recently in the Trail Rider 2, which was a 2-litre. But they're talking about this being a twin turbo diesel and producing 162 kilowatts, and I think it was 480 newton meters.
Okay.
The Trail Rider, as it is now, is 110 kilowatts and 360 newton meters. So so you're getting a little bit more there underfoot.
Yep.
And also in practical terms, just talking about its looks and those sort of things, it seems to be slightly raised. Like to me, this thing looks like you'd look at a Hilux and then you'd look at a Hilux Rugged or a Rugged X or something like that. It seems to be whether this concept will play out as an actual vehicle. I'm not too sure, but it's got another good thing in practical terms is it supposedly has rated recovery points. And those things usually only go on something that the vehicle manufacturer is aiming to be considered at least a semi-serious off-roader.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
and
it looks pretty cool.
Would that kind of thing point, Crafty, in concert with the extra power and torque to a tow rating upgrade possibly? If they've done something suspension-wise, or would that likely stay the same?
I think it'd probably stay the same.
Same, yeah. And do you think is it too early to call this, if it does come to life, anything close to the way we're looking at with the concept, a bit of a turning point? Is if you were Toyota and Ford with Hilux and Ranger, would you be looking over your shoulder, or still thinking they're a way off? What's the mail that you've got in terms of where the Chinese brands stand on that score?
Well,
I think as the
Sorry,
as the
Joe.
facelifts and what have you come through, even facelifts, not model changes, the Chinese brands are really stepping it up. I mean, we can look at what MG's recently done with some of its facelifts, like the ZS small SUV versus the original ZS is such a huge step up for a facelift. And LDV T60 looks like it's probably going to go the same way. And, to Crafty's point, potentially this concept is previewing a new version of the T60 that's kind of more lifestyle, off-road focused perhaps. And then there'll be other versions as well. So certainly seems like LDV is going to have a more comprehensive lineup and offering. So, potentially definitely a turning point. And Ford and Toyota might start taking LDV a bit more seriously if it's going to come to market with something a bit more competitive, I guess.
They're and JC, they're improving all the time. I mean, as is the natural order of things, they're improving all the time. For me, especially
we're all trying to improve all the time. By the way, Crafty, it's an ambition of mine.
Sadly, you don't, though, mate. So.
Too right. Yep, you popped that balloon. That's true.
But to my mind, having recently been in a Trail Rider 2, it's just a little bit too overpriced for what it is and for what it achieves at the moment. It's almost there, but that's a realm in which the Triton sits as well. And to me, the Triton makes a much more sensible buying proposition, just all round in terms, of general everything. But they're getting better. But just a little bit too overpriced for me at the moment. But I'll be interested to see what happens with this.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, it'd be great to get people's feedback in our audience, listening or viewing, and see where they stand with regard to a car like the one that we've just put on screen for YouTube viewers. But are those Chinese brands in your gun sights or still a little way off for consideration? It'd be great to know. But I think we'll now shift to our garage, where we have been driving, two of us anyway, very similar cars. Crafty's been in something quite different. But Justin, I'll kick it off with you. Tell us what you've been steering during the week.
Yeah, just the past week I've spent reviewing the Lexus RC 350 F Sport, which prior to getting in, it'd been a little while since I've driven an RC, and thinking about it, it's kind of a forgettable car. You almost forget that it's still on sale. But
that's also a factor. That's a factor of your memory, Justin. And I think that's been failing for some time. Yeah.
Then I obviously tried to back it up by looking at the sales data, and it turns out it's the 5th best-selling model in its segment. So clearly there are a few people out there buying it.
Yep. Justin, before you get going, is that a quote they're going to use in the advertising campaign?
I think so. I'll pinch it from the review.
Yes.
Oh, good stuff.
Anyway,
to the tune of Nat King Cole's Unforgettable. Sorry, I've got the whole campaign.
But when you do pick it up and actually see it, it's hard to think that it is forgettable because it's so striking on the road. I mean, most Lexuses in terms of exterior design, really can't be missed. Whether you love it or hate it, it's definitely something you won't forget. And I think the RC personally is quite a good looking car. But I just seem to not ever see them on the road. But anyway, so the 350 has the V6 naturally aspirated 3.5 litre. It's a nice engine, but you really need to get it out on the open road to try and experience it. It's obviously being naturally aspirated. You need to build up the revs, and if you want to move quickly, I suppose. But around town, it's actually quite comfortable too, despite the fact that it's an F Sport and therefore it has sport suspension and all that. It's still a pretty compliant and comfortable car around town. Doesn't like potholes, but most cars don't. In terms of it's not a sports car, I guess, was my main takeaway. Despite the fact it's classified as such, it's definitely a comfortable cruiser. And if you view it as such, you can forgive it for some of its shortcomings, such as the fact frankly, the rear seats are completely useless. It's not at all practical. So I guess in that case, maybe it is a sports car
by default.
But they are token rear seats. So as an adult in the back, I can't help but be in with my chin buried in my chest. So
right.
Mate, you're about 8 foot tall, though, aren't you? So
That's the thing. It's the problem of being 8 foot tall.
But all those basketballers love a Lexus. I know Justin's.
They do.
Yeah.
They definitely do. But you look, overall, it's definitely a good car, and I'd say it's probably underrated, if anything. But
just to put you on the spot, Justin, where are we at price wise with that car, roughly?
Yeah. No, absolutely. So the one I was testing kicks off around 77 grand, which makes it $3,000 more expensive than the RC 300 F Sport, which I think someone else here drove recently. So it's a little bit more expensive than the turbo 4-cylinder. I personally, and I know you're about to weigh in on this, JC, I'd say the 300 is probably the better choice of the two, just to save that extra money. But 77 grand. And the good thing about it, and I suppose the strong point of the RC, is compared to its competitors, it is ridiculously good when it comes to value for money.
Sure.
If you compare it to a C300 Mercedes Benz, it's 12 grand cheaper and comes loaded with kit that you don't get in the Merc. So, if you're someone that thinks with your head, you're going to walk away and say, yeah, I'm buying the RC. I'm getting some bang for your buck there.
Yes. If you're not, if you haven't been imprinted with a certain brand loyalty, logic would say that's a pretty good option. Yeah.
100%. You'd be walking away buying one of those every day of the week.
Well, look, you're 100% right. I've been in a car that's markedly different from yours. It's an RC 300 F Sport. And you're right, it's about 75 and a half before you put it on the road. And it's the 2-litre turbo petrol. And I think it is very striking. Friends of mine saw it through the week, and I was kind of taken aback by their response. It was as if they'd seen a Ferrari, or a Lambo with its scissor doors up or whatever. They were just all circling around it like it was something from another planet. But the thing to remember is it's a rear-wheel drive car. So I suppose the sports car thing, it does stand up in that regard. It does have that rear-wheel drive feel. The 2-litre 4-cylinder turbo, 180 kilowatts, 250 Newton meters, not enormous numbers, but that torque peak is available from 1650 RPM. So you do get that more urgent kind of pulling power early on and through the mid-range. But it still weighs about 1.7 tons. So it's not a lightweight. It's got a fair amount of weight to haul around. But in the plus column I had that it is impossibly smooth. It's also beautifully built. And quiet and comfortable, except for those potholes. And the value, I had value written down. And the audio system, the base audio system is terrific. That's a real Lexus forte. The not so good, I had the remote touch interface, which is just a constant bugbear, which is horrible. It's hateful. It should be outlawed by the UN or something like that as a crime against humanity. And it just lacks a bit of guts. And it's not really an engaging car to drive. It's not for drivers. I think it's for people who like the look of the car and they enjoy the style of a coupe body with a bit of difference to it. But it is by no stretch an engaging driver's car. It's very much a comfortable way to get where you're going, is the way I'd sum it up. And that's perfectly valid. It's just a little different to some others in the segment.
That being said, with the RC, one of the unique things about it, and I'm pretty sure it's true of the 300 as well as the 350, is a rear axle steering. Oh, okay. Definitely changes your perception of the car, and I'd actually say it's probably one of the better versions of rear axle steering in modern cars.
Does the front axle steer as well, or is it just from the rear?
No, it's purely
like a forklift.
So the front axle it doesn't even come with front tires, actually.
That's right. It's a
two-wheeler. But at low speed, the rear tires turn in the opposite direction to the front. And then at high speed, they turn in the same direction. Yeah, so it's all about high speed stability and low speed maneuverability, and you can tell the difference the second you get in. Like in a car park, maneuvering it around, it's very direct and very quick to do what it needs to do, and the turning circle as well is pretty tight. Considering again in the 350's case, it nearly weighs 1.8 tons. So again, a light car. So that's it's an interesting feature.
Cool. Now, Crafty, speaking of luxury, you've been in the premium end of a very strong and old favourite. Tell us about your experiences lately.
I'm just going to relish the moment where I've driven something more expensive than you blokes. So,
good.
Let me just cherish the moment. I was in a 200 Toyota LandCruiser 200 series Sahara, so that's almost 125 grand's worth of Land Cruiser. Unreal. I really enjoy driving the thing. I've driven it and the Patrol, which I consider those two really close in terms of everything. It's starting to feel a bit old, starting to feel a bit dated, well and truly ready for either the 200 series facelift, which we've teased recently arriving here, or the 300 series. So, but the problem is, especially with people who love a big V8 turbo diesel, is the fact that the 300 series is tipped to have a smaller engine. So V6 petrol or diesel, or a petrol hybrid option.
Hybrid, yep.
So I guess, and this was the whole point of my off-road review, is that this might be a Land Cruiser enthusiast's last chance to step into a big V8. It's comfortable, it's capable. We took it on some hardcore stuff as usual. There's nothing wrong there. There's a fair bit of tech and sort of frippery that I don't really consider you need.
Oh, gold star for use of the word frippery there.
Frippery.
Crafty.
Did you like
done.
that?
Yeah, I loved it.
And it doesn't, for 125 grand, and I make this point in my review and my video, it just doesn't feel like a prestige space inside. Like I've been in other things that have been considerably cheaper, and yeah, it just doesn't feel like it's worth that much money. It's all easy to use and it's all well laid out. The build quality is unreal. It's great to drive. Again, I love the thing. I've towed with it. I've towed 3 tons with it, a 3-ton van. And it's unreal in all those aspects, but it just feels like not enough for too much money. So,
righto. How much headroom between it and the LX570 Lexus, roughly? What sort of a gap would you be looking at to get up to the Lexus?
Not a lot. I can't remember the exact price because I was in a 570 most recently.
Yeah, that's okay. We can put that up on the screen for people on YouTube.
Yeah. I think it's pretty close. And I remember
Alex kicks off at 143, Crafty.
Oh, okay.
Well, there you go. Not a lot at all 15, then.
15.
Yeah.
And if you're in that realm, I mean, 15's not going to go. You're not going to be a deal breaker. But I remember the LX feeling like so much more of a prestige space, a prestige vehicle, and yeah. But again, it's unreal. 200 series is unreal, but it's well and truly ready.
Okay.
For a slap and a tickle in the next round to turn up. So
yeah, and a facelift. That's right.
That too, yeah.
Okay, well, I think it's time on that note to move to Muskwatch. Now, look, we said last week that the dear leader was bored, and I think it's been proved yet again this week. The launches have happened for SpaceX. Tesla's kind of ticking over. I don't know what's happening with the Boring Company or various other pursuits, but he's obviously got a lot of time to get on social media. And NDTV ran a story saying why Elon Musk is tweeting about rumours of an affair with Bill Gates. So this is where we've got to. And the backstory is, of course, that Bill Gates has been critical of Elon Musk's views on the corona pandemic, particularly around his skepticism on the numbers, on lockdowns, on the need for them or otherwise. He's been very vocal about that kind of stuff. And also, Bill Gates famously bought a Taycan rather than buying any kind of Tesla. So immediately, Elon was well and truly had Bill in the sights as an enemy, thanks to that. So first of all, he goes on Twitter and says, and it also, by the way, he's currently noted his location on his Twitter handle as Trollheim. So he's living in Trollheim. This is a nearly 50-year-old man. The rumor, he says, the rumor that Bill Gates and I are lovers is completely untrue. That's what he's put out there. And then he's followed that very quickly with, but sometimes when we touch. And there's a clip of Dan Hill doing Sometimes When We Touch.
Oh,
so viewers on YouTube will get a little glimpse of that.
Yeah.
And there was another one. Aditya Singh ran a great picture and said, "Really? Explain this." And it's the front of the Titanic. You know, you've got the classic scene with their arms out, but it's Bill in front and Elon behind with the big hug. So that is a bit tricky to explain.
Some people have too much spare time, don't they?
Oh, yeah.
He followed up with another that just said total eclipse of the heart, right? So then cue, of course, a clip of Bonnie Tyler with Total Eclipse of the Heart.
Good song.
And the Bearded Bard VR then posted a truly disturbing deep fake video of Elon over what looks to be Ariana Grande in a series of fairly suggestive poses.
Compromising position.
Oh, yeah. And look, I watched it a couple of times before I could actually break my gaze away. Oh, it was very, very odd. But people on YouTube will be able to see that, for better or worse. And then he said, he followed another tweet. He just wouldn't let it go. He says, Billy G is not my lover. So then you've gone down the Jacko route. And Stephanie said, thank goodness he's not your lover. It would be awkward at home with Grimes. And I thought that's a very, very good comment, which it would be. But then
Grimes being his wife.
Is his significant other, I think. I'm not sure whether they're married, but there you go. And I just get this picture of him on the couch or in his big winged leather chair in his lair, you know, as a Bond villain, sending out these ridiculously juvenile tweets. Anyway, he followed that with, he said, Twitter sucks. That's what he said. Twitter sucks. Okay, so that was a provocative statement. And V said, yeah, Twitter is like Ricky Gervais said, it's like reading every bathroom wall in America, which is a nice way of summing up Twitter. Lady India just said, then leave. And Stevan said, facts, and wrote a picture of a T-shirt saying, Elon Musk sucks. So it's possible to buy that as merch out there. I think that was a custom production for that shirt. And Con said, all right, if Twitter sucks, when the is GTA 6 coming out then? Because he wants some alternative, which I thought was pretty good. And then he got into an altogether different kind of stream of thought and just posted a tweet saying, hold my beer, with a picture. Now, the beer that he pictured is actually New Belgium Starship IPA, and it has a kind of space traveller with a skull instead of a face and some kind of battle helmet on. And that started a whole stream of people coming back at him with beers. And one was Dogfish Head IPA, which was just flat out kind of weird. But then Red Mars, Lost in Spice, which I thought was a really good beer. One, and Space Camper Cosmic IPA. So this is a genre of beer that I was completely unaware of. And also Miles and Miles, which has an astronaut on the can. So there's this whole traveling into space thing happening with beer that Elon has, pardon the pun, tapped into. But the way we always finish up Muskwatch is with the share price. And I've got to say, for Tesla, it's softening off. So the share price, if you can call it soft, is $1,487. So one share is $1,487. But last week, it was $1,513. So it's come off, and the high of the week was 1,541. And in fact, Business Insider Australia is reporting that Bernstein in the US is downgrading Tesla and says the stock will tank 42% from, quote, its mind-boggling valuation. So someone is saying the emperor has no clothes here. They say, this is Bernstein, says Tesla shares are far too expensive to recommend after more than tripling in 2020. Even after the automaker beat earnings and crept closer to being included in the S&P 500, its valuation is mind-boggling. Estimating Tesla stock's near-term trend could be a fool's game, but risks including slowed profit growth, a delayed product pipeline, are causing them to think this way. So others are on board. It's stairway to heaven for this stock, but there's someone that's saying, look, I think we need to take a good hard look in the mirror before we recommend that anybody buys this stock. And it has been an exceptional year so far for the Tesla shares.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But with that, I think we have reached the finish line. And I want to say thank you, Justin.
Thank you.
And thank you, Crafty.
No, thank you, mate. And thank you, Justin.
Thank you, Crafty.
And thanks to our production commander-in-chief, lead potato scientist and fake mourner, Mr. Pritchard, for his nimble fingerwork on the mouse, dials and sliders.
Oh, so nimble.
Today, he's in a T-shirt saying, irony, the opposite of wrinkly. Inflatable pants, amazing inflatable pants,
Yeah.
and Nike high tops in cardboard.
Nice.
Extraordinary pair of shoes. I'm sure it'll be mugged. Someone will be wanting those.
Yeah.
Please pass on the word about the podcast and let us know your thoughts by searching for CarsGuide on Facebook and Instagram using the hashtag CGPodcast, or email us at comments@carsguide.com.au. If you're an Apple Podcasts listener, please rate and review us. And remember, you can watch us on YouTube. But before we go, a pork pie stops at the Macca's drive-thru, gets to the server's window, only to be told, sorry, we don't serve food here.
Shocking.
Shocking.
Bad.
I'm not going to use that one.
I'm not going to retell that one. Oh, my God.